Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Melissa Nelson, and I am the externship coordinator for the Morningside College Applied Ag and Food Studies Department. And today we are joined by some of our very good friends, Cleo Franklin and his network that he has brought to us for my workforce preparation course today. The students that I have in this class are getting ready to go out on an externship this summer and into next fall and go out and do some real world experience as part of our curriculum. And we were lucky enough to get to work with Cleo Franklin on getting some great speakers this semester to introduce them and reinforce the things that we're learning in this class. And so we have loved working with Cleo and the people that he's brought to us. And so Cleo, I'm going to let you introduce our two speakers today, and then we are going to get started.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, class. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to bring the Franklin Leadership Foundation Professional Ag Series to you. I think we've had two great sessions, and this one's going to be consistent with the previous two. Today's subject is preparing for a career in agriculture, and I could not think of two more esteemed, personable, down-to-earth, but knowledgeable colleagues that I'd like to introduce to you. And with no further ado, I'd like to first talk about Dr. Jeneen Fields. Dr. Jeneen Fields is not just a progressive leader and a scientist, but she has a passion for doing all she can to prepare students for future leadership opportunities tomorrow and expose them to agriculture by all of her activities, as she really is committed to doing so today. She's a research scientist in the Department of Botany and Plant Pathology at Purdue University, and she also instructs the largest foundation plant science course at the department. She's an inspiration. She's a trailblazer. She's been recognized for her research and winning 2 national research awards, and also fully funded from a research grant perspective. She's also the honored recipient of the 2019 Purdue Real World Experience Award for her diligence in creative leadership for women in agriculture. But more importantly, she's an alumnus of Penn State University with a Bachelor of Science, and also Alabama A&M University, of course, with her master's degree. She's earned her doctorate degree in plant and breeding genetics from the University of Tennessee, and is believed to be the first African-American woman in the nation to receive her PhD in plant breeding and genetics. So she is very esteemed, of course, a trailblazer, and you're going to enjoy meeting with her. I'd like to also introduce you to, again, my colleague, Doug Griffin, the managing principal out of the Context Network out of Ball Ground, Georgia. Doug joined the Context Network in 2015 as a principal and part owner. He specializes in assisting equipment companies and agriculture technology businesses to develop their strategic plans, as well as the development and implementation of various management processes across the board. I've known Doug for many years. He has spent a lot of time, not just at AGCO, in various leadership experience position as an executive, and not just for the U.S., but global. But Doug continues to really be a force in agriculture, and very happy to introduce Doug Griffin to you. Again, it is our pleasure, our privilege on behalf of Morningside College to introduce these two esteemed leaders. And with that, I will turn it over to both of them. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Cleo, for the introduction, and hopefully my PowerPoint is now being shared. I'm going to go into slideshow mode here so you can see this in a bigger screen, and I'll get started. So good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you. I have I guess a special place in my heart right now for college students, as I've got 3 kids at the University of Georgia myself. And then to give you a little bit of my background, just as we get going here, I grew up on a corn and soybean farm in East Central Indiana. and went to school at Purdue University, Dr. Fields, and I obtained an agricultural engineering degree from Purdue. And actually, while I was at Purdue, through a co-op engineering program, I started working for Caterpillar. So I'll share just a little bit more in a moment on my background, but it's a pleasure for me to be here. I know we've got a mix of people in the class, some who are going to be working in industry someday, some who may be returning to a family farm operation, and I'll try to make my comments applicable to both of you, but please bear with me as there are a few differences between those two. But let me just start out here. Let me just tell you a little bit about my career to start out with. And so, as I mentioned, when I was 19 years old, I started working for Caterpillar through a co-op engineering program. Worked for them while I was at Purdue. And then when I graduated, I went to work for Caterpillar full-time in their agricultural products division, and did that for almost 15 years total. In 2002, the division that I worked for was actually sold to another company, which was AGCO Corporation. AGCO Corporation, some of you may have heard of, some of you may have not, but AGCO is the parent company for brands like Massey Ferguson, Fendt, Gleaner, Sunflower, Heston, some brands I'm sure most of you have probably heard of before in your involvement with agriculture. But I spent 13 years with AGCO, and in 2015, actually took an early retirement package from AGCO and joined a consulting firm by the name of the Context Network. And what Context does is consulting, as Cleo was saying, in the agriculture space. We work with food companies, we work with crop science companies, and my area of specialty with my background is with agricultural equipment companies. So I'm one of the principals. There's 9 of us that own the firm. We have about 30 full-time employees. We have about 100 to 115 independent contractors that work with us on a regular basis to do consulting all around the world. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but just to put it up and tell you just a little bit about context to give you some insights to the type of work we do, everything from ag investment to ag development to ag innovation, ag sustainability. We actually have 2 offices in Africa now where we are doing work with the Gates Foundation and many other of the NGO type entities where we do our what we call Context Global Development. And then we do work with companies like Monsanto, now Bayer, John Deere, Kubota, companies such as that we work for as well. And then just to one last slide, just to give you a little bit of insight. So our main office is in St. Louis, Missouri, but we also have offices in Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as you can see here, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, Brazil, and the Netherlands on a global basis. So it's a pleasure for me to share just a few thoughts with you today. I'm gonna keep my comments brief and at a high level, and I encourage you, please take notes, please ask questions, please engage in conversation when that time becomes available. But let's just talk about a few things here. So if Cleo asked me, he said, hey, what kind of advice would you have for these college students, especially as they're getting ready to do their work programs, and what type of advice would I have? So I'm going to go through a few things here and just give you some of my thoughts on things that at your age, at your point of where you're at in the very, very early stages of your career, things that I would recommend that you think about. So let me start out here on the first one. And this is by far the most significant and most important advice that I tell my kids, that I tell other people, and that I certainly would like to share with you. And that is follow your passion. You've got a lot of years in front of you to have a career, and your career will be so much more rewarding if you are doing something that you want to get out of bed every day to do. It's not necessarily something you want to feel like, gosh, I don't jump up and down every morning to go do it. I understand that, but if you're not interested in what you're doing, if you don't have a reason to want to be better at what you're doing, it's not your passion. So find something that you enjoy, find something that you're excited to talk about outside of work, because it's your passion. And that's the number one thing that I would share with you, and the number one thing I have learned in my background. As an example, when I worked for Caterpillar, an outstanding company, for 15 years, and their agriculture division was sold, and I had the option to stay at Caterpillar, move into their industrial equipment, or to go over to Agco and stay in ag equipment. And the primary reason that I chose to switch companies was to stay within the ag industry, because I had a passion for that industry. So number one, first and foremost, is follow your passion. Let me just share a couple other things. Get out of your comfort zone. Even, if you're going back to the farm, try some things that has never been tried before on your family farm. Maybe it's something as simple as non-GMO beans or organic corn, or, but try things that make you just a little bit uncomfortable. If you're too comfortable, you're not pushing yourself enough. Let me give you another example. I grew up on a corn and soybean farm, and I went to work for Caterpillar in their ag division. And boy, I thought, I want to go back and work in corn and soybean country. I want to work with dealers in corn and soybean country. But I quickly realized that wasn't the best thing for me to do, is that I needed to go out and learn new things and see different types of agriculture. And I went down to Texas and Arkansas instead, and I worked in the, I worked in cotton country and with rice farmers. And boy, I learned a lot about how cotton's grown and how rice is harvested. And when you go into a rice field during harvest, you always bring a pistol with you, because there's too many rattlesnakes in the field and copperheads. The Central Valley of California, I mean, there are so many different types of crops, so many different things to learn in the Central Valley of California. And so it was all about getting out of the comfort zone, doing something a little different. So even if you're going back to your farm and you feel like, well, this farm's been pretty much the same for the last 30 years, well, it doesn't have to be. Learn about other farms, try different things. If you're going into industry, push yourself just a little bit. If you're not just a little bit uncomfortable with where you're at or the decision you're making, then it's probably not pushing yourself hard enough. So you always want to be a bit out of your comfort zone. I tell people, everybody says, I want to sleep well at night. Well, I do too, but it's okay to wake up a couple times during the night, just a little bit out of your comfort zone. Let me go to the next one. I've got about 5 here. I won't take too much time. This is one that I call build your foundation first. We all, I think, have these somewhat ideas of things we might want to do someday, or maybe we want to go try something, or maybe we want to start a new company, and that's great. I encourage, like I said before, getting out of your comfort zone. However, let me just say this. I encourage people earlier in your career, build a strong foundation. Go to work for a company that's well known. Build that resume. And build it with companies, build it with work that people can recognize, where you can clearly point to successes you've had, and build that strong foundation. Then if you want to take a flyer and go work on something later, then go do it. But you've always got that foundation on your resume. You've always got those foundation skills you built in that first job, that I encourage you to really think about building your foundation first, and then do some of the more maybe out of the box crazy things, so to speak. So last, and then take your chances. As I was saying, get out of your comfort zone, take chances. Yeah, go try working for a new startup. See how it works out. Go try working for this company that you really don't know much about yet, or keep working for the company that you're building your foundation at. But first, try to build that foundation. The next one I'll just share, and this is one that nobody can understand until you've started working your way through your career. But time passes by quickly. Don't waste time in a job that is not what you want to do. Don't waste time in a job that is taking you nowhere. And don't waste time in a position that's just not working out. Recognize when you get into one of those spots. Recognize when it's just not what you like doing, and move on. Don't sit there and let 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years pass by, and suddenly you realize you've just spent, maybe a fifth of your career in something that it wasn't what you really wanted to do. So just don't waste that time, even early in your career. Those 2 or 3 years from age 23 to 25 are pretty important. Those 2 or 3 years from age 25 to 28 are pretty important. Don't let them pass by without producing something that is beneficial, that's moving yourself forward. And this isn't one of my bullet points, but there's only one person that's going to make your career better, that's going to manage the time, that's going to manage taking chances, and that one person is you. Nobody else is going to do it. So your career, how you manage that time, how you manage chances, how you manage the farm, whether or not you pick up more acres, whether or not you pick up some more farms, whether or not you grow other crops, there's only one person that controls that fate, and it's you. So don't look to somebody else to make those decisions for you. Do it yourself. Just a couple more things here. Know what you're good at and do it. I mean, understand, I'm an engineer by degree. I went to work in marketing. My very first job, full-time job, I went into marketing, and I've had an entire career really centered around sales and marketing. And the reason why was because I recognized my strengths. Even though I had an engineering degree, my strengths were more around working with people and talking and working with customers and being able to influence, what a dealership might want to do with their future. So, know what you're good at and go do it. And really make sure that whatever career, whatever job, whatever you're doing is leveraging what you're good at. And then the very last one here, and then we'll move on to our second speaker. Don't forget your priorities in everything that you do as you pursue a career, as you pursue new jobs, heck, as you pursue making money, right? That's why we all work. We want to make money. But don't forget your priorities and all. If family is a priority, don't forget that. And make sure that helps drive those decisions. If living locally is a priority, then don't forget that. If seeing the world is a priority, then go do it. But always come back to what are your priorities, because if you ignore your priorities to chase one thing or another, eventually you won't be happy. So whatever you do, don't forget what your priorities are. So Cleo, I put just a few comments together, and I certainly didn't intend to be preachy, and I hope it wasn't perceived that way. But I am looking forward to maybe answering some questions here, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and we can move forward.
You did a fantastic job, and as you can see, class, that Doug is not only passionate, he understands the business. He speaks, he walks the talk, and there's an old saying I believe in. It's not about just getting on the ship, it's understanding how the ship works before you get on the ship. And I think his talk is really in concert with that. But this class is not bashful. They'll have plenty of questions for you. And Melissa, I think the next opportunity probably would be to go to Dr. Jeneen Fields, and then from there we'll have a Q&A. Great job, Doug.
And so one of the things I'll say at the beginning is I'm so excited about the fact that Doug and I didn't have an opportunity to talk, but it's amazing how the kindredness of some of the facts he shared were really a part of my presentation as well, maybe just a slightly different approach. And so I look forward to sharing that with you. And so as we begin, we're going to just talk a little bit about preparing for a career in agriculture. And I took what I call a people skills approach. So as we look at how we're going to prepare for career in agriculture, the one thing I want to share is that success must begin with you, the person in the mirror. And there are a few things that I think I've learned over the course of several years, and then also just observing and being a part of teams that I wanted to share. The first one is it's critical to have personal confidence. The second is it's important as a student and a person emerging as a career in agriculture to have fortitude. It's also really important to be what I call an effective member of a team. And the final one is when you take things to the next level, and that's talking a little bit more about leadership. And I have a little comment here called the flip that I'll explain to you as we get on in the presentation. So first of all, as we talk about personal confidence, the thing that I'd like to ask you is, where do you think your confidence comes from? There are so many different things that can impact a person's confidence, their upbringing, their interactions with people. And so one of the key things that I say to you is that when you look at developing your own personal confidence, you have to begin with important reasons why you do what you do. So it's important to have those reasons. It's a really good book called Understanding Why, or Beginning with Why. And anytime you embark on a career, particularly I'll say in moving from college into the workspace, you have to remember your reasons why. And a lot of that has to do with your passion. The second thing is that you have to develop a baseline of trusting yourself. A lot of times there are so many influences that come in, especially as young people. You should go do this or you should go do that. But the key thing is you have a baseline of what it is that you really love. And so you have to develop a way to trust that inner self and just follow that passion. The third thing I like to say is that remember that in the process of developing confidence, you'll constantly be interacting with other people. And one of the things I always try to share with my students is that there is a whole world of problems to solve and so many different things to do as you're progressing your life and career. One of the things that you have to develop is a baseline of confidence that understands that it's all right for you to shine, and it's really all right for everyone else or other people to shine around you. And so that baseline of just being able to do what you do and then allow others around you to do what they do and you all win is really important. And I'll tie that together in a later slide. The next thing that I find that is really, really important is to keep what I call a truth speaker on speed dial. While it's really important to trust yourself and to go through all the other things I mentioned, it's really important to have someone that you can call that will tell you that you're pretty much on the right track or when you're not. And so I'll give you an example. I was a leader of an organization some years ago, and it was a bit of a challenge in that process. But there was a friend and a colleague that was part of that team. And a lot of times when we were trying to make important decisions, we would almost have this eye to eye cue, kind of like, yeah, you're on the right track. No, we may need to reevaluate that. And so what I call her is with sort of like a truth speaker in my life, someone that I know that I can count on to keep me somewhat accountable. And so when we talk about that, that's really, really important. So how does this look in action? When we talk about personal confidence in agriculture, how is it that you take this confidence and you insert it into what it is that you're doing? The key thing is that you want to, first of all, be good at what you do. Many of you are about to embark on a work experience that people are hiring you for because of your expertise. So be comfortable in that and go into this process and exert yourself as the person that knows what you know, but is also willing to learn and grow. I think that's really important. The second thing I'll say is to be excellent in what you do. It's good that you know what to do, but you also have to carry a sense of excellence and diligence as you're executing those different things. Remember, it's not selfish to self-promote. And I will say this to all of us. Typically, we tend to kind of maybe lay back sometimes and not really share all that you're able to do. Well, it's all right as you go on to your externships to really be able to just say, well, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Show your whole set of skills so that that employer can really get a sense of who it is that they are potentially thinking about hiring. And then in the last thing I'd like to say on this note is to really stay grounded. While it is important to have confidence, it has to almost have a nice blend of humility with it. And so with that, I have a little volunteer activity I'd like to ask of you. It's called the 2-minute hire. So of the students that are in the class, is there anyone that will step up and do a potential sort of what I call mini interview with me? Let me know by speaker if you're willing to do it.
We got one coming. Hold on.
I'll do it.
Okay, what is your name?
Tyler Vavrina.
Okay, Tyler, I can't see you, so we're going to just kind of fly with this. But what I'm going to do is kind of set up a scenario. And I am going to be an employer wanting to evaluate you for hiring. So I would like for you to take about a minute or two. And I'm going to say, tell me what it is that you think you can bring to this company that would be a unique addition to this position. So what is your background, first of all?
I'm a junior at Morningside College. I'm going in agronomy and ag business.
Oh, wonderful.
I grew up on a family farm. I have a lot of experience in agriculture, and I'm wanting to learn more about agriculture.
Okay, excellent. So what I'd like to do is hire you as into a sales, we'll say a sales leader role. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about your background and tell me why is it that you think in this sales role you will be able to contribute to this company effectively? You got minutes.
Okay. Interviewing for a sales role, I think going into sales, especially in agriculture, it's a lot of teamwork. It's a lot of dealing with people, and being able to do that, I feel like I'm a great fit for that. I've always been involved in sports. I'm on the basketball team here at Morningside College, and I think I'm a great leader at what I do, and especially in the sports field. I'm a great teammate. If you talk to any of my teammates, they will all tell you that I'm one of the best teammates out there. I think that sets me up as a good fit for this position. And going forward, especially in agriculture, it's always a learning process, and I'm always wanting to learn more about agriculture. And not everybody's opening to do that, and that's why I think I'm a great fit for this position.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And so what I'd like to do at this moment is highlight a few key that were really critical, and it also almost leads into some of the other things that I want to talk about. The things he mentioned is that he's a good team member. He also mentioned that he was a good team leader. And he also mentioned that he was willing to learn and grow. All of those are really critical things that employers look at when they're seeking to hire. So I want to thank you so much for volunteering to do that off the cuff. Thank you for your being willing to play along. I appreciate that. Moving on to the next part, we're going to talk just briefly about fortitude and how does one become fortuitous? What that means is like, where's your grit? What is it that you can kind of muscle down and really get down and get done? One of the things when we talk about fortitude, first of all, is looking at location flexibility. A lot of times in agriculture, one of the things that I share with students is they have to be willing to be flexible in their first, perhaps even their second job that they take. A lot of times we tend to want to stay home. I'll just share with you briefly. My background in agriculture is very untraditional. I grew up in Philadelphia in a city. And so I emerged into agriculture through exposure with my high school, which is an agriculture science high school. And so I don't have that normal farm background, but I have a very diverse farm background, both in animals and in plants. So that's kind of interesting. But as I began to look at positions once I graduated, I had to be willing to consider Iowa, Minnesota, places that were very different from Philadelphia. And so the key thing I say is it's really important to be able to go and expand your wings. And if your desire is to ultimately come back home, you oftentimes through your process and career changes can navigate closer to home, but definitely be flexible regarding your location. The next thing is personal flexibility. A lot of us may come from a given background and have certain things that we're very familiar with, but it really is important to be open to expanding your mind. One of the things that I share with students is not only are companies often just local, but they're global. And so there may be times where, for the first time, you have to travel out of the country if you've never been. And basically share your expertise in a culture that you're unfamiliar with. And so that definitely takes some personal flexibility and the ability to grow into that role. The final thing I'll say is that it's really important to have mental toughness. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times you are interacting with people and things go well, things may be a little challenging. And oftentimes you can look at things and take them very personal. But one of the things you have to develop is what I call kind of a velvet over steel mentality. Be a soft and gentle person in your execution, but also be mentally tough and firm about the things that you really know are important, and not ultimately not take things so personal when people give you feedback, things of that nature. So the next thing I'd like to ask is, what are some of the things, if you're willing to share, that you think you've experienced in your life that shook your confidence a bit? And the second thing is, how did you overcome it? Who's willing to share? Give me your name and tell me, go ahead and share your little story.
It's Tyler Veverina again.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
So I'm sharing like something that shook my confidence and how I overcame it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So coming to Morningside College on the basketball team, expecting like you come out of high school, everybody's your best player coming out of high school, and then you get to college and it's like, wow, it's a huge step up compared to playing in high school. And then going into the second year, not getting the position that I'm most wanted was to play on varsity and start on varsity, and not getting that. But for me to overcome that was to just grow as a teammate and really buy into the process of working as a team and doing what's best for the team. And I think what really helped me was just staying positive and finding that positivity in the other teammates that I was with.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the things is, a lot of times when we talk about fortitude, you have to have a way to navigate back. So you notice he said that, his expectations were one thing, but your ability to adjust, not adjust down so much, but adjust to be a part of the overall plan, helps in order to be able to continue to keep your confidence and overcome those different challenges that you come across. Thank you for sharing again, Tyler. So when we talk about the next topic, we're going to talk about being an effective team member. So when we look at being an effective team member, it really is important to understand that a lot of the companies, and even think about your family farms, require that you are effectively able to work as a team and get certain things done. So when we look at teams, I like to look at your role, your range, and your reach. And what I say about your role is what you're hired to do. Your range is, what are the different things that you can do? And then your reach is your ability to influence others to do well. And so oftentimes when you're in a team, you have your specific duties that you have to execute. But there may be situations where you'll have to jump in and help others, or maybe help finish out a project, or share additional insight. So one of the things that I say is that you have to also be willing to do some things that are uncomfortable. While you're hired in a specific role, I am a plant breeder at Purdue University. That is what I do professionally. I work primarily with soybeans and breeding what we call characteristics into the soybeans that help them to overcome pathogens and pests that ultimately try to destroy them. But there are times as a team member where I have to, although I'm the leader of this group, jump in and be able to do so many different things. So what does this look like in action? In action, what I talk about is that I'm really an advocate of making what I call cross-functional teams. So while you are really wanting to focus on learning your role and learning your role well, once you learn your role, and this is through your process of in your career, you also want to kind of learn at least a little bit about what the other people on your team are doing. The reason why I believe in cross training is there are different things that come up. A person may be unwell a certain day, or if we have just one tractor driver and no one else knows how to drive, then we won't be able to perhaps harvest. So it's just different things that you want to make sure you learn your job well, and then also learn some of the other critical things like even data analysis, et cetera. And then as a person, you definitely want to be the strength in the link. We always hear the term, don't be the weakest link. Well, I always say be the strength in the link. Be one of the team members that people know that they can count on. Number 3, be willing to lend a hand to others. And then the 4th thing I say, this is just kind of a fun song that there's an artist named Lizzo. And Lizzo has this song, and she just literally says in the song, if I'm shining, everybody gonna shine. And in this, that means that as a team, remember when you're working and you're trying to get things done, you want to be a person that can be counted on, but you also want to remember that as everyone in that team learns to, one, be cross-functional, learns to be strong, and learns to lend a hand to one another, that when one of you shine, all of you shine, and that the team shines ultimately. So it's really important to remember that. The last component that I want to share here is what happens when it's time to move to the next level. This may be down the road for some of you, or it may be some immediate leadership qualities that come out of you that someone recognizes pretty quickly. I have a young man that I've been a part of his, I would say, educational process for probably about 6 years. And he took a job about a year and a half at a company. And already he has moved from that initial role to a territory manager in this agriculture company. So one of the things about being a leader is that people recognize those qualities of leadership, and they oftentimes will go ahead and make that career decision to move you forward if you exhibit those qualities. The key thing that I want to share lastly, I'll say, is that leadership is a trust. Always remember that when you're leading, there are people counting on you. So it's important to be a leader that is present, that shows up and is willing to drive the job forward to get it done. The next thing is that leadership often requires delegation and trusting other people. One of the things that I was really fortunate to have during my educational process was great mentors. And even in research, they would teach me what it is that I needed to know. And then they would let me go and do, and even sometimes make mistakes. But they created an environment where I wasn't afraid to come back and say, well, I don't know if I got this process quite right. Can you check this and make sure that I've corrected it? And so that's really, really important. Next, I'll say, you as a leader don't have to know everything, but it's important that you have people around you that do. And so as my role has changed, while I will jump in and do planting and I will do data analysis, a lot of times those functions are delegated to other people now. And so some of the things that I find is even some of my students know some things that I don't know, and they execute on that excellently. So I'm comfortable with allowing them to do that and to exercise their brilliance. The next thing I'll say is a little word on diversity and inclusion. As you know, our world continually changes, and as you look at jobs in academia, you look at different companies, we really are looking at how we can bring the best people in to do the best job. It doesn't matter about your race. It doesn't matter about your gender. It doesn't matter about your background. It really is who are the best people to execute and bring this thing about. And one of the things that we found is I work actually in a team that is a mixture of females and males. And then we have people from all over the world that are a part of my research team. One of the things that I found is just the backgrounds from the different culture, ways that people solve problems, and different ways that they think has brought a lot of innovation in our research. Finally, I'll say is as a leader, you want to always make sure you keep growing, keep learning, keep reading. There's so many different things that are changing, and you definitely want to stay on the cusp of those things. And finally, I'll say, do you believe in serving others? If you are going to be a leader, part of it is that you oftentimes are the person where everything rests on your shoulder. So are you willing to do that? And at times make the adjustment and realize that while you may be in a certain leadership position, your job is to serve others and make sure that projects are executed and completed well, that vision for the company or the research program is being carried out and things of that nature. And the key thing that I like to often tell students when they're young and they're progressing is pay attention to, if you're willing to serve, how does that change as your roles switch? And that's a really important thing, because oftentimes people can achieve a role when they're not mature enough to handle it. And what I mean is, you may receive a promotion, and the person that you are, people allow you to go into that position because of who you are. But then there are times where people can't quite handle the power of the leadership. So it's really, really important that you maintain a baseline of who you are as you ascend into your different leadership roles, and really kind of take advantage of that thought process where I mentioned earlier that you are the lead servant in leadership. What does this look like in agriculture? The key thing I'll say as a leader is important to have general knowledge of the essential things. It is important to cross-train and prepare yourself. Definitely keep an atmosphere where constructive ideas are shared, because that is the key in spurring innovation. And then the last thing I'll say is, make sure as a leader that, and as a person, you resolve conflicts quickly. There's simply sometimes where people have different perspectives or they don't agree. And it's important that as teams, as part of a group, and as a leader, that you make sure that the culture and the area and the environment stays healthy. Because when you have a healthy work environment, that ultimately creates a healthy individual working in that environment, and that person can execute their best. I will say my parting words on success is really, as a human being, these things can get really sticky. And so the final thing I'll say is to make sure you take time to take care of yourself. I always say that you cannot give from an empty cup. So you have to do the things, whether it's, hopefully eating right, exercising, meditation, some things to keep yourself balanced. The second thing is, remember in your work and in your life and success that relationships are the pillar of everything. And it's important to be genuine, because leaders can usually spot manipulative ways a mile away. And what you want is genuine people that have integrity that you can trust. The second thing, and I'll say this, and I think Cleo and I talked about this one time, but I just really believe in loving people. as you're leading and working with others. Love is one of the few languages that all people on earth understand. So it's all right to care about people and let them know that you're in their corner. That is probably the most important part of everything that I've ever learned in executing and doing well in agriculture. And with that, I conclude, and we open it up for questions for Doug and I.
Okay, thank you guys so much. I wrote down a lot of things for both of you on my little notes here. But we do have a question from a student, and it says, both of you have taken on leadership positions. What are some ways or things we can work on to become better leaders?
Let me just start out, and I would say it's really a conclusion of everything that we talked about, both of us. It's a matter of confidence in what you're doing. It's a matter of taking chances. It's a matter of going above and beyond. There's definitely a lot of there's a mix today of people who are very willing to go above and beyond, and there's some people who don't feel like they need to go above and beyond at all. And I can tell you that if you want to get ahead, it's the people who go above and beyond who tend to get ahead and tend to get those opportunities for leadership positions.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing I would add is a lot of times we think leadership, oh, it's this big kind of obscure thing. Leadership boils down to daily good habits. Can I count on you to be there? Can I count on you to be on time? Do you complete assignments and projects on time? If I can trust you with those little things, I know that I have confidence to give you the next step. And so those little things that you do every day play a huge role.
Yeah, I would add to that. I couldn't agree more. And I tell a lot of people, I say, the easiest thing you'll ever do in life to make a good impression is be on time.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple. All you got to do is be on time, and it makes a big impression. It's the little things. The early bird really does get the worm. Is another saying I have. But anyway, I would agree with you. There's some pretty simple things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question while we wait for some students to type theirs in. Dr. Fields, you talked earlier about encouraging everyone to learn after they leave college, and you even suggested a book that would fit their kind of timeline right now. What are ways that both of you guys continue to learn, and what other ways besides maybe specific books or something, how else do you guys continue to learn in your roles now?
Okay. Yeah, what I would say is that, first of all, I learned so much from my own students, which is amazing. There are some times where students pose questions to me, and I may not know the answer. And I don't mind, even as a professional with years of experience, not knowing the answer. But I will invite them and say, well, let's go on this journey and figure this out together. The second thing is that I do read a lot. I read books in my that that are about confidence and encouragement. I read research journals that are sharing information about new research findings in my field and outside of my field. What's interesting is because of my high school, I actually have some interest in animal science. And a lot of times there are certain areas of animal science that are further along than plant science. So I will glean ideas from working and looking across different subject matters. But I think really conversation, reading are really critical ways that you continue to learn. Always be, willing to be a student, because especially in agriculture, things are constantly changing. And so I'm that professor that changes my slides every semester.
Doug, go ahead if you have an answer to that question too.
Okay, sure. I was going to say, I was looking at the question, what drives you to do what you do every day? My career has changed a lot. I went from being an executive at a large company where level of responsibility was pretty high, and you just had to deliver. I mean, you were expected to deliver, you had to deliver, and I would say what I call that is accountability. I mean, you just feel that you are accountable to yourself to deliver what you committed to deliver. Now, as a consultant, it's really interesting because I do some work with some small companies, and they pay us a lot of money to do projects for them. And quite honestly, there's people's careers that are put at risk based on the type of advice that we give them. And there's people's companies that their success is put at risk by the advice that we give them. So I feel this tremendous level of accountability and responsibility to deliver for them. So it's different being a consultant versus being an executive, but it boils down to you've got to have this personal accountability that you made a commitment and you're going to deliver. And it doesn't matter if it's a corporate job, if it's a consulting job, if it's back on the farm, but you've got to feel this level of accountability. So I would answer that question with accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with Doug. Accountability is a huge part of your drive, that you've made a commitment to do something and you do it. When I was growing up, we used to have this saying in our neighborhood, your word is your bond. And what I find as time has gone on, a lot of times now I have to pay more attention to people's actions than their word, because sometimes people can talk a lot, but they may not execute well. So you have to, I think, go back to that when you say you're going to do something, be a person that does it, because that alone separates you from the pack nowadays. And then also just be good at executing. The last thing I would add to that is just communication. Realize that even this year, we as people have gone through so many different things that we didn't expect in this COVID environment. And one of the things that I've had to realize, even as a boss and a leader, people are going through things and they may not be their best. Well, one of the things that I've always encouraged my people, and anything that anyone I've ever worked with, is just communicate. It may be that I'm counting on you to do a job, but you're just not in the space or place to get that done. Just talk and communicate. So being a good communicator, I think, is a very, very important part of being successful and maintaining the drive to get things done, because it may be that you talk with your boss and you realize, oh, the whole team is kind of not functioning at their peak. So what can we do as a team to make sure we keep moving things along?
This is Cleo. I have a question that I typed miserably on the chat.
Okay.
And listening to this great conversation. What can you both, since you both have had good exposure across the globe, and the agriculture world is a global world and we're all interconnected, we're not siloed, but what are some of the things that, maybe one or two lessons in your travels or your engagement, that you can share with the students as they help prepare themselves for a career in agriculture?
So I'll share just a couple comments there. And as much as things are similar, things are different. And I would just share culture matters. Culture really matters. And when you're going to Brazil, you're going to Africa, you're going to China, the way that you talk to people, the way that you interact with people is significantly different. Even Western Europe. I mean, Germany is different than the U.S. You can sit in a meeting in Germany where you get into a major disagreement with someone and you think that they hate you, and then they can't wait to go to dinner and have a drink with you, because it's their culture. You can go to Brazil and they're the most friendly people in the world, but they expect results. So it's culture matters. That would be my one statement.
I was just going to add to and that dinner in Germany would be a long dinner.
That's right.
Yeah. And the thing that I would say, when you are able to travel, it really is important to just kind of get a sense of the culture. And as you travel, you'll realize how big the world really is, and how oftentimes when we stay in our bubble, um, you really don't have a proper perspective of what is really happening. One of the things Cleo and I talked about in a recent interview was, being a North Philadelphia girl, never did I see that I would be leading trips abroad to study in Peru and look at 75 different microclimates and how we grow plants and vegetables. Never would I think that, but that journey was a process of me leaving my home in Philadelphia, being a part of this school that was students from all over the city, to attending a university that was students from all over the country and the world, that began to expand my global experience. And then through career, being able to work on projects that required that we travel globally. And then finally, as a instructor at Purdue, being able to work on different projects with scientists all around the world. All of these things changed my little, what I would say, perspective of North Philadelphia to a mindset where I realized that there are different things that I need to learn. There are other perspectives that I need to consider. And so it's really important to get outside of your box and your local and your norm. You'll realize that it's a whole world, and there's so many things that we have to work together on, that you have enough work to do for the rest of your life. So, get out there and go. I also see another question here from a student. What is the best advice regarding interviews? And what did you do in your own interview experiences to set yourself apart besides your criteria? Oh boy, that's a good one. I'll jump in and do that. And the biggest thing I can say is be your genuine self. A lot of times at interviews, you're really, really, really nervous. And one of the things that I, do is I do take a moment to calm myself and say, okay, be you. People want to know who you are along with your skill sets. And, we have different personalities, whether we're introverted or extroverted. And when you're working in teams or situations, it's important that you verbalize and you let people know to some degree who you are and what your personality is, along with the criteria, or I'll say your credentials.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is as you start interviewing, you will find most of the people who interview you are not very good at it. You need to take responsibility to manage the interview. And it's really important that you go into that interview prepared, that you go in there with 2 or 3 or 4 really key points that you want to make sure you stress in that interview. And if they don't ask you a question that allows you to bring those 2 or 3 points up, then find a place to put them in. Think about the presidential debates you've all recently watched. Each candidate had points they brought up that weren't part of the question. It was because they went into that interview, that debate, prepared with things they wanted to make sure were talked about. You should do the same thing with an interview. And as I said, most interviewers can easily turn an interview into a conversation. Don't let it become a conversation. You need to go in prepared to take control of the interview if needed, and make sure you get your primary points across to sell yourself.
Yeah, that's very good advice from Doug and Dr. Fields. Of course, and take advantage of these guys are not just are well established in the agriculture field, but they basically have done so in many different sectors. One thing about interviewing, I just wanted to add, as someone who's interviewed but still interviews and hired many thousands of resumes, I agree with what they both said. I think you need to understand your strengths and tell your story, but tell your story along the lines of what the job position is looking for.
Mm.
If in fact Any job position description really gives you the roadmap of those particular skill sets that the company's looking for, along with understanding the culture. Now, that's over and beyond. You have to also understand the culture. So when you're speaking in an interview, your story should be in alignment with, it should be consistent with that job description, and it also should be consistent with showing and giving people a comfort level that you understand that culture, how you're going to add to that culture, how you're going to fit into that culture, and how you're going to be able to take the company forward. But I would always say, understand that job description from beginning to end and tie your strengths according to that and be able to weave that into a story.
This is great because we did mock interviews last week with all of our students. They were connected with a person in industry and they did mock interviews and it was great. So these are awesome tips. Another question that we have in the chat says, knowing what you know now and being in the position you're in, is there any advice you would go back and give to your younger self?
Great question.
Oh, goodness. I can respond to that. I would say, and I actually teach a class at Purdue called Women in Agriculture. And so I know this class is primarily guys with maybe one or a few girls. But one of the things that I would say is to chart your path from the beginning and be diligent about it without allowing, I would say, distractions. My career path was, I would say, very clear going forward. And then I kind of allowed some distractions in the middle. And then I had to reset and refocus and go forward. So the biggest thing I could say is my younger self is to just keep my goals before me and just trust that life will kind of blend things together in the right way.
You know, Dr. Fields, it's interesting that you say that because I would give the exact same advice. Some of the comments I had in my slides were somewhat of lessons learned from myself. And, you know, time goes by quickly. Stay focused. When you recognize you're getting off your plan, off your path, fix it, you know, and do what you have to do to get back on your path. And I would say this exact same thing. Don't get too distracted and pay attention when you're getting off track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that was likely our final question as we're kind of getting close to the end of our time. But I just want to say thank you to both of you